All right, good evening. I believe that it is 8 o'clock proper, and this is Tuesday, November 26th, 2024. And on Thursday, we're going to have Thanksgiving. So, there's been a lot of controversy about what Thanksgiving is and what it started out being with the Pilgrims and the Native Americans and all that. And, I understand that. I've read it. But for me, Thanksgiving is a time of year that I can get together with my family, some friends, but mostly family, and let them know that I really am thankful for them and thankful for, what they are in my life. I have a small family, and it's good to get a chance to get with them. So my aunt is here from Michigan, and I have some other folks that may be coming into town. But the interesting part is I have to get mentally prepared to do a lot of cooking. So I'm the host. Usually we have these at my house. My son has a house now, and he's had a couple of things over there. Like we were there for, I believe, Labor Day and maybe one other party, but mostly over here simply because I have my grandmother's recipe for banana pudding and sweet potato pie. So for the banana pudding, it's not that jello pudding stuff where you put it and mix it and do whatever. It is literally from scratch, and I have to stand at the stove and stir that pudding for over an hour so that it can get thick. I don't know how much you guys know about that, but I have to make 9 of them because so many people want them. So I have some bigger pans and I have some little pans for a few people. I think I got 2 of those little pans, and I don't know. I don't think that's gonna be enough, but, the little personal size ones. But I'm gonna do 2 whole pots of the pudding, and traditionally, my children come over on Wednesday, maybe about 5, 6, or 7, and they do the cookie banana layer while I actually do the pudding. And so, the fact now that we have to do 2, then we're gonna have to put my son's wife to work. He got married in June, and maybe she'll help out with the cookie banana, and I'll have either my daughter or maybe my granddaughter stir in the pudding. Also, my grandmother's recipe for sweet potato pie, I think I have enough for 16 sweet potato pies. And of course, they'll be leaving my house because I don't want to gain 20 pounds. At any rate, today's topic is the pros and cons of being an employee, a subcontractor. Another word for that is independent contractor, business owner, and an investor. A lot of people talk about these a lot, and a lot of people don't understand what they are, what they mean, let alone the pros and cons of them. So, for my tribe, we're going to understand these things. Now, the question that you want to be rolling around in your head, number one, is what is your current role? Are you an employee, a subcontractor slash independent contractor? Are you a business owner, or are you an investor? What role do you aspire to be in the future? What do you desire to do in the future as far as those roles are concerned? Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book some time ago called The Cash Flow Quadrant. By the way, please share this because I'm going to get in some detail that's going to really help. Maybe you want to get a pen and a pencil, or go back to the recording later. Some people like to listen and then they can go back to YouTube later and listen to the recording. But in Robert Kiyosaki's book, he talked about 4 quadrants. The first one is employee, the second one is self-employed, subcontractor, independent contractor. The next one is business owner, and the next one is investor. So what we're going to do tonight is go through each one of them in pretty decent detail so you can figure out where you are and figure out where you want to be, because of course, we want to thrive in 2025. So we'll start off with employee. And I have mentors, and some of the definitions that I use come from them. So when you're an employee, you have a job. And although some people joke about a job means just over broke and jump out of bed, stuff like that, jobs are very important, especially in the beginning and especially for young folks. So the pros for having a job, number one, is stability. You have regular income coming in and benefits. You have the health care. Most of the time, you have retirement, and a lot of times you might have paid leave. They used to call it vacation time, but it's called PTO now, whatever that is. So you have those things. That's one, stability, regular income. My father calls it beating the drum. So every week or every 2 weeks or every month, you're going to get that check as long as you are working. That's one of the pros of having a job. Another pro of having a job is support. You have some clear guidance. Your job is going to give you a job description. You know exactly what you're supposed to be doing normally. They're going to give you the resources to do the job that you need to do. And a lot of times you're in a structured work environment. That's a little less common now that we've had a situation where everybody was working from home, and a lot of people like working from home. By the way, yesterday I heard a podcast that said that the Gen Zers want to go back into the office. There's a call by Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk for all government workers to go back in the office and work. I mean, I'm not even going to get into that. But anyway, they figure out that if they force these government workers to go back into the office, what's going to happen is they're going to have some attrition. People are going to say, "Oh, I'm just going to quit." What they think is happening is people that are older that should be retiring right now, they want to stay on the job and make more money because they're not doing anything at home. They're just not doing anything. So that's interesting. That was a side note. So going back to the pros, there's a lot less risk when you have a job. You have minimal financial investment required. You've gotten that skill that they're looking for, or you've gone to college and you've gotten that degree that they're looking for, and it's not much extra investment that you have to do in there. Now, there are growth opportunities, which is another pro for having a job. If you take some extra coding or get some kind of extra certificates, then maybe you'll have room for a promotion. Some companies are going to give you more money or a promotion if you get extra credits for some kind of coding and different things like that. So those are 4 pros for having a job. Now there are cons for having a job. So we're going to talk about those. Number 1, well, let's go back to the pros. So in the pros, the question is, what are the benefits of having stable income and benefits, like in a benefits package as an employee? Well, the benefit is you have a safety net. When you have a job, it is really what I consider a safety net. Another one is you have to do less thinking outside the job. So a lot of times, except for teachers, bless their hearts, they end up having to grade papers at home, and it's like, no. But you have a job, you're working, let's say 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are, and you're doing that job while you're there, even if you're at home. But then when you're quote unquote off the clock, then you have less thinking to do about that job. So that's an overall pro when you ask somebody, what's the benefit of you having a job? Now we're going to talk about the cons of having a job. So, um, limited control. You have a job description and you have to do what they want. You can't just like my granddaughter, she didn't want to do the math one day, so she just got out her reading book and started reading. You can't do that on a job. So restricted autonomy over task and your career trajectory. You have restricted autonomy. So when I was younger, my father, for those of you that know, he's 81 and he's one of those real pragmatic guys. So he would say something to me when I was like 16. He said, as long as you have a job, your boss is going to determine what kind of car you drive, where you live, and where you go for vacation. And I kind of bucked up at him, said, no, I'll decide what kind of car I want and where I'm going to live. And then he said it again. As long as you have a boss, The boss is going to determine what kind of car you drive, where you live, and where you go for vacation. Then I got it. The boss is the one that writes the paycheck. So if I'm getting a paycheck that is only enough for me to drive a Volkswagen Beetle, live in an apartment, and go to Florida for vacation, that's the boss telling me that. Or if I have a boss that's going to write a check for an amount that's going to get me uh, a BMW, or live in a nice gated subdivision and maybe go on a European vacation. That's a But when you have a job, that's the boss's. That's your salary. That's what he meant by that, and I understood that, and I kept that in mind over the years. So another con is fixed income. It's like when you have a job and you're making X amount of thousands of dollars, that's what you have. If you just have a job, it's fixed income. Earnings are capped unless you get, like, if you have the ability, like some people, to get some overtime or like bonuses. Some people get bonuses at the end of the company's fiscal year if the company did well. Otherwise, you're stuck right there with that fixed income. And another con for having a job is dependency. It's job security relies on someone else, which is the employer. So, and you also are relying on the business health. So, if the business is not doing well, if the business fails, you got to scramble and go find another job. I was kind of scrolling a little bit through the internet the other day and came across a video where a man, and I found out that the video was like a year old, but this man had worked at a company 30 years. It looked like it had something to do with either maybe trucking, or you have to have some forklifts, because I could see some of that kind of equipment in the background. But they were all in a circle. Evidently, they had just been told that the company was folding and they didn't have the pension money. And he was going ballistic because he was, of course, a lot of colorful expletives were going on. But he was basically saying, I've been here 30 years. That's my money that y'all are messing with. And, so they told them they didn't have the pension. So that's a con of being dependent on someone else. So, when talking about the cons, the question is, what challenges do you face with the limited control over your schedule, your workload, and your income? And that's a lot, because it can become a stressful thing. And when you have that kind of stress, then it causes frustration. And frustration, a lot of times, causes hopelessness. I've seen some statistics that say that 86% of the people that have jobs don't like their jobs. They're just there because of the money. They need the money for their rent, their mortgage, their children, whatever it is. And they don't like their, that's a lot of people, y'all, that don't like their jobs. So, that's one of the cons. So one example is, have you ever had a boss or some kind of a project that was so crazy that you were questioning your sanity? And when asked that question, I have two situations that came up. So when I graduated college, I started working at a CPA firm, because back then, and I don't know what it's like now, but if you graduated from college and you passed the CPA exam and you worked for a CPA firm for 2 years, you could get your CPA. If you didn't work for a CPA firm, you have to work for industry for like 5 years. So working for a CPA firm, was a very small firm, and there was me and maybe an accountant. He was one of the accountants. He was from Vietnam. And it was a very small firm. Both of the bosses were very stressed out all the time. It was a black CPA firm. They had an office in, I moved actually from Atlanta to Roanoke, Virginia. CPA firm was in Roanoke, but they also had an office in Richmond. So one of the owners lived in Roanoke and they had a lot of business there. And one of the owners lived in Richmond and they had a lot of business there. So they had me working, like I had an apartment in Roanoke and I would work there during the weekend, and then I would have to drive all the way to Richmond and do audits, and then I would have to drive back and be there on the weekends on Saturday morning to do taxes and all that. So it was a good experience simply because I learned every aspect of accounting. A lot of times when people graduate with an accounting degree, they go to one of those big firms and they only get stuck in the audit department, or they only get stuck in the tax department. but I was in every department, so I learned them all. But one day, the boss came in there screaming at me, and he had this piece of paper, and he was shaking his paper and saying, "This is a mess. How could you turn this in?" And I'm kind of looking at him like, "What is he talking about?" And then he's just really, using colorful expletives, and I'm kind of trying to look at the paper, and it was obvious that the writing was not my writing. It was, how people Asians write. And I didn't say anything, and then he stopped. And he said, "Why are you looking like that?" And the guy's name was Sang Kong. I said, "Because that's Sang Kong's report." And he looked at it, and he realized that he was fussing me out about somebody else's report. And instead of apologizing, saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I thought this was your report," he said, "Go get yours." So needless to say, I didn't stay at that CPA firm long. I was there. My dad always taught me, if you don't like where you are at point A, do not complain, go to point B. So, after episodes like that, I just, I left and came to Atlanta and started working at a CPA firm. And I had another experience where I was working in corporate America and got fussed at for booking an accounting journal entry backwards. And again, they were blaming me, and it wasn't me. It was somebody in another department. So once we got down to the coding and realized it was another girl, again, no apology. So those are some cons of having a job. You have stress. So we're gonna move on to the subcontractor, the independent contractor, what we call the self-employed. So, my mentor said, when you're an employee, you have a job, but when you're self-employed, you own a job. And what is meant by that, before we even get into business owner, a lot of people, and I've said this before on my channel, will say, "Oh, I have my own business. I have my own business," when really they're an independent contractor. So the difference between someone that's an independent contractor or self-employed and someone that has a business is simple to figure out. If you get sick, or if you go on vacation, if you're a subcontractor, or if you're a independent contractor, you're not getting any money. Money stops because you're not there to do whatever it is you're doing. So if you're a business owner and you go on vacation, money is still coming in. And we'll talk about why later. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, I own my own business," but in actuality, they're subcontractors, independent contractors, that kind of thing. Self-employed. Okay, so some of the pros, though, of being self-employed: flexibility. You kind of have the freedom to choose who you want as a client. So you only have to take on the contracts that you want to take on, and the clients and the projects that you want to take on. Another pro for you being self-employed is you have higher earning potential. So you can kind of decide what prices you're going to charge. You can check the market, but you're not locked into whatever that job wants you to do. And let's say, for the sake of argument, you start getting contracts and you're charging, let's say, $5,000, and you realize everybody's coming to you. You can automatically raise the price like Disney does all the time. So you're not limited as far as your earning potential when you're self-employed. And another pro to being a subcontractor, self-employed, is independence. So you're on your own, and you're, without having to run a whole business, you're still on your own, so you can kind of control your time more. So a discussion concerning the pros when you talk about being self-employed or subcontractor, independent contractor, is: how do subcontractors enjoy flexibility and autonomy compared to employees? And the answer to that is, you work based on your family schedule, the flexibility of your family schedule. If you're single, like me, you can work all day and all night. I can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work and all that. So, but if you're working a job, and I've got to be there between certain hours that they say, that's a big one right there. So if you got a family and you're self-employed, you take on the contracts that you want based on your work schedule to make sure that your family's taken care of. For example, if you're a freelancer, you manage your work-life balance really good. I'm going to go on another rabbit trail and talk about the fact that within the IRS, there's like everybody says, well, what's the difference between being an employee and an independent contractor or subcontractor? So the IRS used to have these 20 questions to figure out whether somebody was an employee or a subcontractor, because there are companies out there that really don't want to pay taxes, because of course your subcontractors and your independent contractors are responsible for their own taxes. Well, a company would rather have somebody on board with them and have that person be responsible for their own taxes. However, if that person is really an employee, then the IRS wants that company to take care of the taxes. So some of the main questions that the IRS wants to answer, or wants answered, when determining whether someone is an employee or subcontractor slash self-employed, is, do they have their own hours? In other words, can they come in and do work, or do work at home, or whenever they want to? That's a big factor. Whose equipment are they using? That's another big factor. For example, you can't be considered an a self-employed person if the equipment that you're using all the time belongs to the company. So those are a couple of the 20 questions that when I was an IRS agent were important to figure out. I did have a case where they were treating people as subcontractors, and after I did that audit and write up, they had to change over and make everybody an employee, and they had to go back and pay the payroll taxes, the federal, the state, the Social Security and Medicare, for all those people that they had been treating like self-employed people. And they had to reorganize the whole company and change their name. And to this date, they still have that name if they're still in business. I haven't seen them in a while. Not gonna bring that up. So those are some of the pros to being a subcontractor. Now I'm gonna go on to the cons of being a subcontractor, independent contractor. Inconsistent income. That's the biggest one. So when you're picking your own contracts and you're finding your own clients, sometimes there'll be dry spots. For example, you might have a big contract in January and February, but March, April, May might be really lean. And that's where you come into the situation where your income is not guaranteed. Then yeah, it's a roller coaster income. Now, there are ways that you mitigate that, but those are things that happen a little bit later. So when you first start, that's a major problem when you're self-employed. Another con to being a subcontractor is no benefits. So you have to scramble and figure out how you're going to take care of your health care and other needs and your families. You have to go pay that. And so right now they have the marketplace. Looks like they just changed the marketplace from the federal government to the state governments. So now the state governments are taking care of the marketplace stuff. That's another one. And another one is administrative. When you are self-employed, you got to handle your own taxes and your invoicing of the clients, making sure that you do the work, making sure that it's quality work, making sure that you send the invoice, and making sure that they pay the invoices. Because if you do this work, you send out an invoice and they're not paying, then that's unfortunately on you. You want to make sure that you're handling the taxes. A lot of the people that come to me for consulting, they have they're self-employed, and they were getting that money as they got those checks from the different companies that they worked with. They weren't putting aside money for the federal and state taxes. And so they got behind, and now they're like 3 or 4 years behind. And now they're getting these huge tax bills and threatening letters. So when you're self-employed or independent contractor, you have to put something aside for that, and make sure that they want you to pay quarterly. Make sure that at least you pay it with the tax return. All right. So we're going to move. Oh, no, no. The question is, what are the downsides of inconsistent income and handling your own benefits? That's if you have poor accounting skills and you have poor spending habits, as a self-employed person, you can go broke really quickly, because if you're not keeping up with the paperwork, like these people that owe this tax, or if you're spending a lot of money, you're bringing in this money, then you go out and buy a new car, and then you get golf clubs and all that, you're going to go broke really quickly if you don't have the discipline to make sure that you put money aside. That's a big one. um, Burnout is another one. You know, you're running on a roller coaster, and there's a potential, to be excited about it at first. There's a potential to take on too much work, and if you take on too much work, that's going to cause you to be burned out. So the next one, the business owner. When you are a business owner, you have systems in place and you have people working for you and with you. That's the difference. So when you go on that vacation, other people are working for you and with you, and the money's still coming in. So the pros of being a true business owner are, well, you know what? Hold on. Let me go to the chat and see before we switch over. So Robert Kiyosaki in the cash flow quadrant put the employee and the self-employed in one quadrant, and then he had a separate quadrant where you had the business owner and the investor. So before we switch quadrants, I want to check the chat. Yeah, job just over broke, jump out of bed. And I don't like people a lot of people must have a job, depending on where they are with their, education level, their skill level. And it's always a good place to start. And I'll talk a little bit about a little bit more about that later on. So if I'm not an employee, what is the hourly equivalent for a salary? For example, if I make 50,000 a year, is that equivalent $35 an hour, knowing I have to cover my own benefits? So I think the calculation that people use to figure out their hourly rate is to divide their annual salary by 2080. Let me try to see if I can get out of this and do this. This is interesting. I'm trying to get out of here. Let's go out to the calculator. So 50,000 divided by 2080 is $24 an hour. So it's $24 an hour if you're making 50K. That's what it is. Good evening, CPR International. Yeah, that's right. It's 2080. I think it's 2080. Is it 2080 or 2040? Renelle is saying 2040. Somebody go online and see if it's 2040 or 2080. I don't remember. That's something so if we do 50,000, not 500,000, 50,000 divided by 2040, we have 24.5. So that's 24. So it's around that, but no, if benefits are involved, then you're making much less than that. That's an issue. Okay, so it's 20. Wait a minute, right? CPR is $20.04. Okay, so let's go on and talk about the business owner. So the pros of being a business owner when you have systems in place and people working for you and with you is you have creative control, full autonomy over decision making and operations. It's you that's in charge. That's the great thing. You have unlimited growth potential. You can scale the business because it's not just you. I talk to my clients a lot of times about the ones that have a business that they're saying that it's just them doing something. So let's say for the sake of argument, they have a cleaning company. If it's just them working, they only have a good 8 to 12 hours and then they're just beat at the end of the day. But if they make that into a business and they hire people, they can scale and have employees or subcontractors, and they can take on more clients and get more money. So unlimited growth potential in here. Income scale based on your business success. A lot of times when a business first starts out, it's that person, and everybody loves the work that person does. You have to be very, very careful about who you bring on, regardless of whether they're a subcontractor or an employee, because if they don't have the work ethic that you have, then your reputation is going to tumble. So, legacy building is another pro for a business owner. You have the opportunity to create a lasting impact and a brand. So, your brand can go on for years, even after you've retired. And it's something that if you built a brand and you're able to sell that brand, you can make pretty good money. People have built up a brand and they've sold the brand and they can just sit back and start another business. There are a lot of people that are considered to be serial entrepreneurs. And what they do is they'll build a business up, sell it, build a business up and sell it. And that's great. So, as far as the discussion on the pros of having a business, a real business is, what's the biggest advantage of being your own boss? Well, yeah, it's it's a joy because you get to do a lot of times what you want to do and you get to think things through and you don't have to filter your decision making. You don't have to between you don't have to filter your decision making to some boss. Now, it's great to have mentors. I have mentors that I filter stuff through, but you don't have to go, and if you come up with a great idea and then you have a job and you go to the boss and they're saying, no, we're not going to do that. And especially if a couple of weeks later, you find out that the boss turned in that idea for themselves and said it was theirs. That has happened to people, I know. So how does it, you can go on vacations and still make money. That's a really big one. So you're out of town and you're looking online. For example, I go to Costa Rica and then I look online and somebody has purchased a package or they've purchased some books or something like that. That's another pro for having your own business. So you can create wealth. And we're going to talk about the definition of wealth when we get down to investor. So some of the cons of having your own business: high risk. So you have financial risk, you have legal risk, and you have market risk that can threaten your business viability. For example, when your business starts to grow, you can become a target for people to sue. Many of you know that I call this country the United States of America because we have like 5% of the world's population, but we have 70% of the world's lawsuits. And there are more lawyers in Jacksonville, Florida than the whole of Japan. So this is the United States of America. So when you grow, you become more of a target. When you have a business, you have high financial risk. You make decisions. I've made some horrible business decisions and lost lots of money over the years. And I've made some good ones, but it's a risk of you making a business deal and it crashing, just crashing to the ground. That's a risk that you take in business. It's gonna, it's not something to quit over. It's, you just learn a lesson. Another con is your workload. It often requires very long hours, especially up front. When I first started my business, I was like maybe working 16 hours a day sometimes. I had some employees, but I was having to make sure that all of their work was correct before I turned it in to the person we were contracting with, to the company. And I remember just staying up all night trying to make sure the reports were correct and maybe getting a couple of hours of sleep and trying to drive these things to where I was supposed to drive them and having to pull over on the road because I just couldn't make it. So those are the things that you go through up front. Responsibilities. You have responsibility for yourself, your family, and other people. Now, you also have responsibility for business compliance. It's you that makes sure that you're in compliance with stuff like the payroll taxes. I know of a company that had 8 employees and they had an accountant, but this accountant was not aware that they were supposed to be paying quarterly payroll taxes. Now, how that person got through school, like not knowing that. So the IRS came knocking on the door to this business and said, "Hey, you haven't paid payroll taxes in 3 years." And then the owner looked over at the accountant and, it's like, I didn't know, but that's not helping. So you do have a lot of responsibilities as a business owner. you don't have time for leisure, especially in the beginning, and you don't have time to procrastinate ever, because that will mess you up. If you want to be the person that comes home and watches the news every night or watches your favorite show, then maybe being a business owner is not for you, because a lot of those things, they're irrelevant as far as I'm concerned anyway, but a lot of those things have to go to the wayside when you start a business. So talking about cons of having a business, the question would be, how do you handle the pressure and responsibility of employees, clients, and overall business success? And my best answer to that is delegation. Now, you don't delegate everything, but if you start finding great people to work with you and for you and delegating out those responsibilities, then that's less stress. So delegate when you can. Now, the person who does not do well in business does not delegate. They try to do everything themselves, and then they get exhausted and then they get frustrated. So, for example, the question, have you ever had a moment where you thought, why did I even get into this business? Those are the people who they have people surrounding them that have capability and have potential, but they want to do everything themselves. I don't have that situation. I don't ever wonder why I got into this business. So that's it for the business owner. And we're going to move on to the investor. When you are an investor, you have money working for you. Usually you become the business owner first, and then you become the investor. Of course, you can do both at one time. But for example, like the people that start a business, they build up a business, they sell the business. Depending on how much money they get for selling that business, they don't have to start another business. They can just be an investor using that money to make more money. When I was an IRS agent, my very first time seeing a tax return or tax transcript with millions of dollars on it, someone sold a business for $17 million. I don't know what they did after that, but I was just staring at that transcript. I had the paperwork to say, okay, this guy sold a business, and he could have started some more businesses. A lot of people, they get bored if they sell a business and then they go to some island somewhere and sipping margaritas, and after 3 months, one of my friends, after 3 months, she was bored as all get out, so she got back and started another business. So in investor pros, you have passive income. Money can grow without active daily effort. You don't have to use your physical body or even your mind, because your money is growing behind the scenes. That's one of the pros of being an investor. Another one is scalability, potential for exponential growth over time, depending on what your investments are. And another one of the pros for being an investor is diversification. You can spread the risk, because there's, risks we're going to talk about, across various platforms. Like, I believe in having multiple streams of income. So if you have multiple investments, when something's not working out well, then other things are. For example, if you have 5 rental properties, everybody's paying rent on time, and then 2 people are not. Well, the other 3 people are still paying, and that should, first of all, you should be putting some of that money aside for emergencies like water pipes bursting or something going on with the house. But then if 2 of them go down, if 2 of your investments go down, the others are still working. So you can spread that risk. So that's one of the discussions concerning pros for having investments. So, what attracts people to earn money passively through investments? You get more bang for your buck. If you have someone come in and say, okay, you have the opportunity to buy some gold at $313 an hour. I'm sorry, not an hour. $313 an ounce, and then later on, gold is going to go up. You say, okay, well, I want to invest in that. I'll sit on it and see what happens. And then now, somebody go into Kitco and find out what gold is going for. It was, I think, a couple of weeks ago, over $2,000. So somebody like myself that started buying gold at $313 an ounce, and now it's worth over 2,000. That's good. That's a good investment. Let's see. Have you ever had an investment pay off big? Well, I've had an investment payoff. I don't consider it big, but what I did with the money, I took some of it and went on a nice vacation, and I took the rest of it and put as a down payment on the house that I'm in right now. So, everything doesn't have to go to investments. I needed that vacation. So let's see what's next. The cons for being an investor, of course, market risk. And whatever that market is, investments can lose value due to all kinds of economic factors, whether they be real or manipulated. Here in the United States, there is so much manipulation of not only the stock market, which I don't deal with at all, but even manipulation in gold and silver prices. But they're not going to be able to do that forever, because if you have physical gold and silver, they're not going to be able to suppress physical gold and silver, which is what I invest in. I don't invest in paper stocks and paper anything. That anything that can disappear in the blink of an eye, I don't invest in it. I invest in things that I can hold in my hand and things that I can put my bare feet on. So another con to being an investor, knowledge requirement. It requires an understanding of markets, industries, and risk. You got to understand what it is that you're investing in. Too many people that I know have thrown money at something because it sounded good. The presenter was making a good presentation and they threw money in it and they didn't really understand. They just saw these big returns based on what someone was saying. And then they put their money in there and lost it, fell flat on their face because they didn't do the research to figure out whether this was a viable investment or some slick person in Italian shoes just talking, you know, flashing money around and flashing Rolex watches around and stuff like that. One of the other cons is initial capital. A lot of times you need initial capital to invest in something. You need initial money to invest in real estate. Some people say you don't. Some people have those connections. Um, I think that sometimes you can at least have a small down payment and invest in real estate. You do need money to buy silver and gold. You do need money if you're the type person that's going to go into the stock market. So an initial capital investment is going to be pretty big. That's the biggie right there. You're going to have some money. People talk to me a lot about, my development in Costa Rica and how much it's going to be. And it's like, yeah, you got to have a significant amount to put down so that, your infrastructure can be built. And if you have decent credit, you can get financing. You could sell one of your extra properties like a couple of people have done, those type of things. Some people taking a little bit from their retirement. It depends on what you want and how you structured your life and your finances. So a discussion on the cons of being an investor. What risk or challenges come with investing? This is what I learned. And I think that the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, also has it in there. Never invest in what you cannot afford to lose. Never invest in never invest anything that you can't afford to lose. So if someone's talking about an investment and all they need is $10,000 and you're going to make $100,000 by the end of the year, if you can't afford to lose that $10,000, do not do that. Another thing, the saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. The way I say it, if it sounds too good to be true, do very thorough research. And I literally have a questionnaire for people who are approaching me with investments. And we're not going to go over that today, but yeah, so if it sounds too good to be true, it may still be true. I mean, there's some investments out there that, people talk about, if I coulda, woulda, shoulda listened to this person, then, I would have been rich now. Well, if you had thoroughly investigated it and maybe didn't listen to a person that said, oh, that's too good to be true. Some things are true. So I'm going to go back to the chat before we go on and do a little bit of comparison and ask you some questions. So be ready for questions in the chat. Nate Rand says, is it true that the 14th Amendment was not ratified? It's actually the 16th. So there's a set of books called The Law That Never Was. And my buddy Bill Benson was one of the co-authors on that set of books, and they went to every state in the 48 contiguous states to get a certified copy of the vote on the 16th Amendment. And if it had been done correctly, it would not have been passed. So yeah, that's that. Reno, this information is great to know. I'm trying to give you all very, very good, relevant information for those of you that want to thrive in 2025. I'm hoping that you like the video, and I'm hoping that you share it so that other people can get this information. The things that I'm teaching, they aren't new and they aren't secret, but I think a lot of people don't know them because they're not out there. And I think I give a different perspective on them, being that I'm a retired CPA and a former IRS agent. So I'm glad that it's really a help. And then Nate, what's the difference between nationals and US citizens? I don't get into that. I mean, you can do the research on that and there's something to it, but I am concentrating on this channel on the 95% of the people who want to beat the system. They want to work within the system to beat the system. A lot of times when people are doing other things, it not only puts a target on their back, but a lot of times if paperwork isn't done correctly, then there's trouble. So, regardless of whether you want to call yourself an American national, U.S. citizen, and all of that, a lot of times the government just ignores whatever your paperwork says and just mows you down. I've experienced it, and other people have experienced it. What we concentrate on this channel is, okay, this is how this system is set up. How do I beat the system? How do I learn to play their game and beat them at it? Most of the people that you know are out there in the spotlight, are playing within the system and beating it, like our president-elect Donald Trump. We go over again in 2016 when he was running against Hillary Clinton, and they were having a debate, and Hillary said Donald Trump didn't pay his taxes, and everybody said and they sucked all the air out of the room. And then they called me. I don't have TV, so I had to go out online on YouTube to listen to that exchange. After that, he said, well, I'm a smart man. Well, yeah, he uses the tax code. He pays people thousands upon thousands of dollars a month to go find loopholes in the tax code. Nobody's going to bother him because he's using what? The tax code. So if we have learned to use the tax code, we don't have to worry about either a bullseye being on our back or some kind of a rain cloud over our heads. Like when I first started out, I had all this information and I knew I was right, and I am right, but I put the target on my back. I tried to cut the head off the beast. Well, the beast has too much power and too much money coming in, and that didn't work. So now I teach people how to starve the beast. You starve the beast by working within the system. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to ask you all to participate when it comes down to being, in the chat. So when it comes down to being the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, or the investor, which role do you think works best? What do you think works best for you? Okay. Which one of these offers the best work-life balance? Put in the chat, which one offers the best work-life balance? Okay. Shango says investor. Okay. Anybody else? We've got the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor. Which one of them offers the best work-life balance? I want a couple of more people to put that in the chat before I tell you my answer. I'll wait. You've got the employee, the self-employed, or the independent contractor, the business owner, and the investor. Which one offers the best work-life balance? Okay. Rightfully Structured says self-employed. Okay. Vanell says investor. Okay, great. Great. This is what I'm saying. And all of those, there's no wrong answer to this. But in my life where I'm working with people, it says knowing your, okay. So when I'm working with people, the employee that is also a business owner has the best of both worlds. because they're an employee and they still have those benefits. They are still getting that steady paycheck. But when they come home from the job, instead of turning on the TV or, going to play golf or whatever, for just a few years, there's a time and place for everything. So just maybe even a couple of years, maybe 3 years, they're going to come home, they're going to decompress, spend some time with their family, eat their dinner, and then they're going to start working on that home-based business, a real business. They're going to grow that business. And then at some point or another, when they decide to, they can quit that job. I tell my clients, don't quit the job before 2 years, practically 3 years, because you want to make sure the business is going to be consistent. You don't go and you start a business and you're making good money in the eighth month and you quit your job because the economy could change or your business could be just a fad or something like that. And then, unfortunately, you have to humble yourself and run back to the job. No, keep both. We have to. I believe in hard work. I believe in putting your nose to the grindstone. So definitely keep the job. Start the business. Start, getting people to help you, like subcontractors, to help you, the self-employed people, to help you build the business. So the best of both worlds. And then you don't have to worry about those benefits, especially if you have a family. You don't want to quit that job and then, start have this business going and you're paying for healthcare and all that, and something happens with the business, your family doesn't have healthcare. So the best of both worlds, to me, it's not one of them. It's the employee and the business owner. Then you cut the ties with the employer when you are. Did I not turn this phone off? I did. When you cut the ties when you're comfortable that your business is going to sustain you guys. Another one, which one of these roles do you think creates the most financial security? Which one of those creates the most financial security? There are no wrong answers. The employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor. Which one creates the most financial security? I want y'all to participate now. Okay. Jeremy says he would like to start some kind of IT business. I would agree with that because that's what's trending right now. IT, AI, all of that. The people who know the computers are the ones who are, automatically thriving. So, business owner, I agree. Rightfully structured, I selected business owner. That's, to me, the one that's going to create the most financial security because you're an investor, but sometimes, depending on what's happening in your country or globally, those investments could get a little shaky. But when you're that business owner, you're the one in charge. You're not an employee. You may have employees, you have subcontractors, people working for you, and you're thriving. And when you're doing that, then you can make investments. But the business owner, to me, is the one that has the most financial security. So one of the other questions is, how do these different roles interact? And what I would say is what I just said. A business owner is usually the one that hires. Like, I have 3 people that I subcontract with. They have full-time jobs, they have families. I ask them to do stuff and I pay them for that job. The bad thing is when you have a business and you start moving too fast and you hire employees and you've got some work coming in, but at the time that you don't have work coming in, if that happens, you still got to pay those employees. So you get some good people and you say, hey, I'm going to have you as a subcontractor, and maybe these months are my busiest months. Will you be able to help me during those months? Some people will say, well, no, I can only commit to every other Saturday. Well, you have to make a decision as to whether that person is going to be the person you select. You want to basically pick, when you have a business, you want to pick people that are a little bit flexible. Now, I've run into situations sometime where my people, I get an opportunity that comes in and I need something done on a website, like to make a link for an event, and my person's on vacation. Well, I'm scrambling to try to find somebody to take their place. But it's easier to not hire employees until you get pretty big. So one of my clients is like at 2 or 3 million, and they have employees. but a lot of my clients, they, like I do, hire subcontractors. So last thing, somebody said in employees. Okay, uh, what does Joe Bannister do that allows him not to file taxes since the 90s? I know exactly what Joe Bannister is doing. I'm not going to reveal that on here. His strategy is sound, and it won't work for everybody. When you have the clout that Joe Bannister has, you can do what he's doing, but I'm not going to sit here and tell people what he does. We've had discussions about that because we talk regularly. So no, if you reach out to him and he tells you what he does, then he'll tell you. I'm not going to tell you what he does. So I want to ask you this question. If someone gave you, I want everybody to answer now. If someone gave you $100,000 tomorrow, would you invest it? Would you start a business? Or would you keep working as you are now, whatever that is? If someone gave you $100,000 tomorrow, tell me what you would do. Would you invest that? Would you start a business? Or would you continue to do what you're doing now? I want to see that in the chat. I want to see that. Somebody answer. There's no wrong answer because everybody has their own temperament. Some people take more risk than others. I think in some ways I'm a risk taker, in some ways I'm not. But there's no wrong answer. If somebody gave you $100,000 tomorrow, would you take it and invest it? Would you start a business, or would you keep doing whatever it is you're doing now and maybe put it in a savings account or something like that? Let me know. I'd use it to leverage business credit. Excellent, Renelle. Excellent. That would be my answer. But, again, that's for people who already know about business or have a business. Educate myself with the law. Okay, excellent. You have to remember, though, Nate, that these people don't follow the law. I know a lot about the law. I know that these people don't follow the law. You can know everything. You can know what the law says, all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, and they just ignore that. They've done that, and they'll do it. They'll continue to do it because it suits their interest. For example, a mortgage is just, you can't loan credit. The law says you can't loan credit. A real loan is when I take money that I've earned and I let Nate borrow that money. That's a real loan. But a bank didn't earn that. They just created out of thin air. That's totally illegal. They do it all the time. There was a guy that was writing the paperwork that said this mortgage isn't real because this money isn't real because it was created out of thin air. And when the person signed the mortgage agreement, then, you turn around 3 times and tap your heels, and then there's this loan. Well, he was winning cases at first, and then it got to the point where he was literally getting mortgages dismissed, canceled, because it is true. It's what the law says. So the people that were looking at the paperwork saying, yeah, this man is telling the truth, we gotta eliminate this mortgage, 0, 0, 0. So he got about 7 done, and then he started teaching this and helping people. Well, the banksters and the judges and all those got together, and after that, when he was submitting these cases, the judges were summarily dismissing these cases. They would just dismiss them. So he wasn't winning anymore. He was right, but he wasn't winning anymore. And so it ended up, people were angry at him because they had given him money to get their mortgage dismissed. And he ended up passing away of a heart attack because of the stress. He knew he was right, but they don't follow the law. So working within the system the way it is the way I've chosen. You don't have to choose that. Towards my mortgage. So if it doesn't pay off the mortgage, I would, if it were me, if my mortgage is over $100,000, I'm not going to do that. See, understand that this is another concept. Cash accumulation is not as important as cash flow. So for me to pay off a mortgage, I just have a paid off mortgage. Unless I'm going to take that house and turn it into some kind of cash flow, it's not helping me. Leveraging that $100,000 to create a cash flow that's coming in on a monthly basis is definitely going to help me and make me thrive. But if I have a mortgage that's $150,000 and I get 100,000 and I throw it on the mortgage, and now I've got a $50,000 mortgage, I've got nowhere. But if I take the $100,000 and make something out of it to where it's bringing in, you know, $5,000 a month, I can take that $5,000 a month and throw it on that principal and do other stuff. And then eventually the mortgage is going to be paid off, but I still have that $5,000 flowing in after I've paid the mortgage off. This is how I want you guys to think. We are not taught this in school. Do not be ashamed if you don't know this. They intentionally do not teach you how to manage money and to deal with finances in school because they don't want you to know. They want to, there was a Rockefeller quote about, I don't want people to think, I want people to work. I don't want thinkers, I want workers. And that's who they are, but we have to be somebody different. This is what my dad says, and this is my dad's quote. William Peel Jr. said, "We cannot tear down the master's house with the master's tools. We have to make our own tools." And that's what we're doing here. So let me go back to the chat. Is the buy, borrow, die strategy works to avoid paying taxes? I don't like the buy, borrow, die strategy. When you have a mortgage, you have a slight tax reduction for the interest income. So they have to give you a little bite there. I'm telling people, don't go buy a house right now. I talked to a young man today. He called me while I was on the way to the farmer's market. And I told him, you're getting ready to get married. I would suggest that you go find some place to lease with maybe the option to buy later, but don't go get yourself in that kind of debt. It's a debt trap. Don't do it. Don't borrow till you die. I mean, mortgage, the word mortgage means debt until death. So the Latin for mort is dead. The morgue, mortgage is a debt until death. We don't want a mortgage. I'd use it as one of the many streams of income by investing it. Excellent. I'd purchase multiple unit properties. So rental, I like that. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It says rental. I like that idea. You can purchase a multi-unit property. Some people that I know have purchased like a strip mall, like with a strip with 4 different stores in it. And they're in one with their business and they're renting out to other 3. And sometimes the people in the other 3 don't even know you're the owner because you have an entity that owns that whole building. They pay their rent to an entity. They don't necessarily know you are the owner of that entity. It depends on where you set that entity up, which is a whole nother area. Okay, you can recast the mortgage and lower your monthly costs. Yeah, you can, but with interest rates the way they are right now, that wouldn't be a good idea because they're still really high. The interest rate on my house right now is like 3.6. There's no way I would be able to, refinance and get something like that right now. I'd invest in property. So Nat B, yes, I would do that. I would definitely invest in property, as I've done. Nate Rand or the law. I'm not understanding that one. I'm so sorry. Yeah, death pledge. Yes. So I wanted to talk about, there was one, when you recast, your rate stays the same. Okay, so that's different than refinancing because a lot of times it's going to change. So I asked, I think it was last Friday, for people for you guys that are on here to ask me questions. I got one question in, just one. You all didn't obey. You all help me out. When you have questions, just, send them over and I might be able to answer them because I want to kind of go in a direction that's going to help you. So the question came from Amy. And Amy said, I would love to know how you sourced your land in Costa Rica, especially for some good deals. Did you go through a certain website to find deals, or did you go through a realtor? It's different in every country, but it's more like word of mouth. So my little story about Costa Rica. Thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat, Maggie. Showing support for all the wisdom shared. I really appreciate that. I really do. Thank you. So I had a client, a consulting client back in late 2017. He called and said that his brother married a Costa Rican girl and her father had all this property, but he needed money. He was land rich and he was cash poor. So they asked me, hey, you have a following and your people understand having a plan B and getting property in other countries. Can you help us sell this property? So I said, I can't sell anything that I haven't seen. So my son and I flew down. I really fell in love with the East Coast of Costa Rica. And, the rest is history. So there are realtors down there. I would deal with a realtor, having a lawyer. The guy that owned the property, he was actually a lawyer, a retired lawyer. So there are different ways to do it. These websites are going to give you these huge prices. I would actually spend time down there seeing where I might want to be before I bought anything. You go to one area, you fall in love with it, and then you realize, oh, maybe I should have gone over here. So spending time in different areas, I knew that I wanted to be on the East Coast. The Caribbean is beautiful. It's just wonderful. So that's how that happened. Now with the house that I bought a house while I wait for the development to happen. I talked to my realtor and she found me a house, small house, not a lot, not a big mortgage, so that I can stay there as opposed to spending a whole bunch of money on hotels when I'm there. Cause it's like, if I'm there for 3 weeks and even if the hotel is $100, that's $2,100. That's a lot. So I just said, well, I'd rather just get a mortgage. The last thing that I want to talk about before we exit is I am giving a master class on the 14th of December. Now, in these master classes, we're on Zoom. I'm not restricted concerning what I say. I like to talk about certain things, and you hear me sometimes making these pregnant pauses. And when I'm making these pregnant pauses, it's more like, should I say this on YouTube? Because they have an algorithm that catches things that they don't like being said. So, but when I'm on Zoom, I can say whatever I want to say. I mean, I went I went for it. I had to teach. I was invited to talk to some students at one of the colleges here, and it was a night class, and it was a night class. It was an accounting class. So I did a presentation, and they started asking questions, and I was like, "Here's the truth, you all," because I really wanted, especially the young people. There were older people in the class. I wanted the young people to understand you don't have to follow the crowd. You don't have to go in that direction. Yes, you're in school right now, and yes, accounting is a great degree to get because any business, you've got to have some kind of financial knowledge. Never leave anyone solely in control of your business finances. You got to know something. The people like Willie Nelson and all that left somebody in charge, and he and some other people, I think MC Hammer, some people like that, they just went bankrupt simply because they left somebody else in charge. You got to know something about accounting. So accounting is great, but a lot of people in college. I had a girl that was at University of Georgia with me. She was majoring in archaeology. It's like, okay, all those ologies is kind of like right now, if you're gonna go to college, get some kind of IT degree or something to do with computers. I read an article some time ago that said the 25 careers that will be the trend makers for the next 20 years. And that was a long time ago. And sure enough, the ones that I remember, they're there. So the class that I'm going to have on the 14th of December, we're going to talk about why and how do I start a business? What business is good for me? What's good for you might not be good for me, might not be good for Bobby, might not be good for Natalie. Okay. What strategies will help me thrive in business? That's very important. A lot of people like myself, especially with this real estate, my budding real estate development, I don't know what I don't know. And a lot of times I paid the price for it. So certain things that will help you jumpstart. So this master class on the 14th from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2. This masterclass is a jump start for your business, the one that you already have or the one that you're going to start in 2025. Remember, we're going to thrive in 2025. And then the next subject that I have on here, how do I grow the earnings and avoid taxes? So it's not always about what you make, it's about what you keep. And so if I can take somebody's tax return that made $150,000 and, you know, the legitimate deductions and tax credits and all that, get it down from 150,000 to 20,000, that's a good day. And that can happen, but you have to keep up with it. So anybody have any questions? Have I heard of the, I can't see that. It's PILL method. I don't know it by that. Principal, interest, leverage, liquidity. Yes, that is a strategy. It's considered kind of like a medium to high level strategy. That's not the kind of stuff that's the stuff I talk to my clients. So yes. And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of strategies that I talk to about my clients as I learn them and put them in place myself. If they're working, my client's going to know about them. Do not say it on YouTube, say it on Zoom. Right. So that's what I'm saying. So the things that I'll be talking about in the class on Zoom, and even if you sign up for the class and you can't make that 4-hour class, you will get a recording of the 4-hour class. It will be available for you in some type of back office so that, hey, I missed the class, something came up, or I know I'm not going to make it, but I'm going to still, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, everybody that signs up for the class, I think I put down here, it's almost like a Black Friday special. I added on here, you get a 30-minute consultation. So regardless of whether you have a business or whether you want to start a business, you get a 30-minute consultation on your personal situation, which I don't talk to people about their personal situations on Zoom. I mean, on YouTube. And I do have a tendency to let people go over 30 minutes, hint, hint. So yeah, just think about joining the class. I think the link for the class is in the description box in most of the current videos that I have. So I'm only going to be able to take on a limited number of people simply because I can't do a whole bunch of 30-minute consultations. But after the 14th, I'll be doing these consultations like between the 15th and the end of the year, and they may flow over some depending on people's schedules. But I want everybody starting January 1st to be ready and in the pocket to go ahead and start their business or to grow the business that they already have. So let's see if I left out anything. In that link, it'll tell you all of the rest of the stuff. We will have 15-minute breaks. I'm not going to go for 4 hours straight. We're going to have like from 10 to 11, we're going to go and then have a break, 11 to 12, a break, 12 to 1, a break, 1 to 2, and then done. Anybody have any questions about that? I'm looking down here. What life insurance do we need to get to become our own bank? That's one of those questions that I talk to clients about. See, when I'm on YouTube and I talk very general, then it's okay. If I start talking about specific stuff, then it's not good, because that question, Nate, is depending on people, the different people and their background, and whether they have children and whether they have health issues. There's a lot to go with that. So it's not really a general question. It's a question that we talk about as a client, or let's say, if you're having, I have 1-hour consultations, but like for this masterclass, you'll get a 30-minute consultation. I think I put 30. If I didn't put 30, if I put 15, it's going to be 30. But that's a question that I can answer one-on-one with people. So don't see any more questions. I am debating on whether I'm getting ready to go start those 16 sweet potato pies. Definitely not going to start the banana pudding tonight. And I may not do 16. I actually have 16 pie crust and I got a lot of potatoes. So I'm thinking that I may wait till the morning and put them on to boil. But again, for those of you that weren't on in the beginning, I'm usually cooking for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm not much of a cook outside of that. I do cook, but my son says I have a couple of strong suits. My grandmother's banana pudding recipe, which by the way is from scratch, and it's not the Jello pudding stuff. I can't even eat that. I stand at the stove and stir that real pudding for an hour. So I've got 9 of those to make, and I have it about between, let's say, 12 and 16 sweet potato pies to do, and it's not that hard. And I have a Hawaiian turkey to do, so that's a 22-pound Hawaiian turkey. So between tomorrow and Thursday morning, I'll be busy. I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for. Stay diligent. There are things that are happening behind the scenes. Don't take your eye off of your goal. Don't take your eyes off of what's going on here. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Talk to you not this Friday, because it's the day after Thanksgiving and people are still going to be eating and you know their family. So the next Tuesday, whatever day that is, next Tuesday we'll come live and I'll put the subject out there as soon as possible. So everybody have a great night.